Well, a happy Wednesday to you. I wanted today to pull some threads together of the different things that I've written about over the last little while and some of the conversations I've been having outside of those discussions I've shared online. So, Geospatial 2.0, I started talking about that a number of years ago. I realized that that was a technology conversation. And I've now realized that where we are on the commercial business side is we haven't yet moved to 2.0. Again, my perspective. So, what are the four components that make up Geospatial 2.0? Number one is GIS. GIS is an integrated platform. It allows us to visualize data, manage data, ask questions of data. Super important. But it isn't the only game in town when it comes to geospatial. It's one part of the bigger whole. A second part is the world of remote sensing, and that's been really a key driver behind this whole third revolution that I've been talking about. That is because we've now got new sensors collecting all sorts of data. There's a lot of talk about LiDAR, many other different types of data we're now collecting, from terrestrial up to sort of satellites in orbit. So there's the second piece, that's the data component. The third piece is artificial intelligence. Much discussion around this, probably too much, but we've now got generative AI, we've got machine learning, which falls under that, but is a broader area of conversation. That's allowing us to automate the processing of these enormous amounts of data, to analyze that data to be impossible for a human. So that's the third piece of the pie. And the fourth piece of the pie is really real-time data. And I'll put IoT as the main piece of that, where we're getting streams of knowing what's actually going on in the field. So we have four pieces, and the industry generally is focused in one or each of those places. To be harsh to GIS, people think about 2D maps. They're thinking about, how do I apply a map in this particular scenario? That's a very narrow viewpoint of what GIS really is. And I think where we're moving to is to start to think about how we connect all these pieces together. And that's where the commercial conversation comes in. Folks in the commercial world have got to think more broadly about how they do the work that they do, how they bring value to customers, and it's changing. I'm going to illustrate this with a use case, but before I do, let me make one comment on the structure that I see within the geospatial organization that I've worked for and with. We really have three different groups within those organizations. We have the product teams, we have the marketing team. Sometimes we don't have a marketing team for the small organizations, and we have the sales team. A lot of times the geospatial industry is sales led. Big sales team, limited marketing, some interest in product, maybe a product is evolving. So sales led organizations. And another piece of that pie is service companies, a lot of service companies. That is beginning to change, particularly around as people see the opportunities that these four pieces I've just mentioned present. We can tell different stories. Remote sensing companies no longer just need to provide fuel, the data, to their customers. The fuel doesn't solve the problem. It is one piece of the pie. GIS, much bigger than 2D maps. Those platforms are evolving and becoming multi-dimensional platforms, ArcGIS being a very good example of that. So we have new commercial opportunities, and the world is stuck in a little way in our own little silos of thinking. That has to change. So Geospatial 2.0 and the evolution of the commercial world, the business world, is really taking advantage of connecting those pieces. And I've mentioned the trend of acquisitions that are going on, which is really the realization of Geospatial 2.0. It doesn't mean those organizations that now do acquisitions can bring those pieces together, because again, they've got people thinking in remote sensing terms and GIS terms instead of broad terms. That's actually where I fit in. That's the work that I do, because I sit between each of those groups, sales, marketing, and product, and I connect the dots. So let me help illustrate this in work that I did with a group back in the mists of time, but I think it illustrates how, as a commercial approach, the Geospatial 2.0 commercial approach, we can be successful. So we had two products within this organization I was working for. We had a 3D viewer, which was very cool, and we had a dashboard, which was also very cool. These were products built completely separately, with their product teams working in complete isolation, building out these things. There wasn't really a commercial go-to-market perspective for both of these that was very solid, a strategy for them. I was working with the sales and marketing team, and we were thinking about these two products and why we were struggling to get them into the marketplace and to sell them. One of the things that I realized was in talking to the transportation world, particularly the DOTs, was the biggest issue, amongst the biggest, actually, I think this is the number one issue in DOTs in the US, is this idea of safety. Lots of safety engineers, lots of money pouring into safety. Is cutting down on deaths and serious injuries on the roads. So the federal government is pouring money in to try and solve that problem, and DOTs are working really, really hard to lessen the problems on the road. So safety engineers are really focused there, and there are solutions out there which help them go part the way down the road to solving that particular problem. And what they're trying to do is diagnose a problem, and more often than not, that's in a city. So we knew that there was a particular problem that was a geospatial problem that needed tackling, and it was a high value problem as well. So the value we were trying to bring to the safety engineers, because we knew who we were going after, amongst the most important people in DOTs, was to try and help them improve how they got to that place of not only diagnosing the problem, but actually accurately solving it. So we took a GIS initial type approach, a 2D mapping approach. Often it was data collected by the police, and we mapped that out in a 2D way. So safety engineers could actually see and ask questions of the data they were looking at. They could do clustering, they could do heat mapping, they could isolate those particular intersections in that city that had the most deaths and serious injuries. That's the criteria they're most interested in. And we provided other things in the dashboard, like was it a head-on collision, was it a collision with a motorbike and a vehicle, what time of the day was it? All of those really useful things to help them understand better where they should isolate, where the biggest problems were and where they should focus their attention. So that was the start of the journey. That was kind of the GIS, traditional GIS start of the journey. But when I asked the safety engineers what they did next, they told me they would drive out to those intersections that they'd isolated as where they were going to focus their attention, and they would measure and they would look and they would try and diagnose why that particular intersection was so problematic. Was it low-hanging vegetation? Was it broken guardrails? Was it other reasons as to why? So they made multiple trips out to the site. I said to the safety engineers, have you ever seen a digital reality version of that intersection? And they were like, well, no, we haven't. By digital reality, I mean a 3D version of that. So what we did in our application was, and actually what we did was we brought these two products together. We spoke to both the product teams, we widened their thinking, and we brought them both together, and we said, can we combine these two platforms into one? And we could. And so what we did was we actually allowed the safety engineers to view the 2D data, to click on an intersection and to see that intersection in 3D, in LiDAR. So they had a much different perspective of as if they were standing on the street corner, which a 2D map can't give you. And they started to diagnose problems. They asked us, can we enrich this data? Can you put point data where collisions are? Can you put other data sets in there that help us understand better what might be causing this particular problem? And we did. We enriched the data. We brought different data in and we fused it together into this viewer. So they could switch from 2D to 3D to actually start thinking this stuff through. They also asked us for real-time data as well, traffic movements, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, even some pedestrian stuff. So we put some rudimentary real-time data in there. So they had patterns and relationships from the 2D. They had sense of place from the 3D, and they had change with the 4D. That combination of data sets allowed them to view their world in a very, very different way. So where we went with that, and why I think this is illustrative of where Geospatial 2.0 needs to go to from a commercial's perspective, is the sales team no longer spoke about how cool the 3D platform was. Wouldn't you like to buy it? Nobody wants it. It was very pretty pictures, but they were struggling to sell it. The dashboard was a cool dashboard, but it was very competitive with Esri, who dominate the space. So in isolation, those two products were struggling. When we repositioned them and brought them together, we had the product teams talking to one another with a commercial perspective, because we were starting off with a problem that we knew was out there. We changed the pitch of the sales guys to be much more focused on a problem rather than the technology, 3D or dashboards, or whatever it might be. So we changed their pitch, which was much more successful. And then we involved the marketing team. And again, marketing was a small part of the bigger whole in that organization, but we really got the marketing team to be on board to tell the story that we were trying to tell, the value proposition of what we were bringing to these DOTs. So we really built this perfect world where the product teams were on board and working together. They were talking to the sales team and the marketing team, and together we were all working together to bring this holistic solution to a particular problem that we knew had high value. So I think that that's a very good way to illustrate Geospatial 2.0 technology and bringing different separated groups together and realizing growth from a repositioning and an adjustment of these products to really bring value to customers. So I hope that helps. I hope that's illustrative of some of the things I've been talking about over the last few weeks and actually over the last few years, and helps you see that I think that there's real value in connecting all those pieces. And actually, again, just to repeat myself, that's the work that I do. I sit between these teams. I have a very broad perspective because I've worked in each of the areas of geospatial, and I help to connect those dots. So if you've got questions for me, please feel free to ping me. Follow me on LinkedIn, subscribe to the Spatial-Next YouTube channel, and I'll dive deeper into some of these topics in future talks. Thanks very much for watching.